I had a completely different Zelda video scheduled for today, but with E3 showing us just how radically different this next Zelda is going to be, I think we should talk about that first. We've known the next Zelda game will be open world for quite some time now, but it's only recently that the nature and structure of this world has finally been shown off. It's a pretty radical shift, very much the modern take on the first Zelda that people have been hoping for. But as I watched the ridiculously long streams, I had a few concerns. At first this video was just going to be those concerns, but I don't think that's fair, and it paints my perspective on this game in a completely negative light, which isn't how I feel. So I'm gonna mix it up, talk a bit about the things I'm worried about, and things that could be exciting. Obviously these aren't solid facts, they're concerns, not criticisms. The game could be better or worse or just completely different, but I think enough of this game has been shown that we can understand what type of game they're going for. So let's get on with it. Front and center in both the demo and the trailer is the revamped equipment system. It's more in line with a lot of Western RPGs and traditional open world games. There's also a slowdown mechanic that happens when you dodge or block something. I hope this is just the start. Being able to equip different weapons and having a dedicated way to counterattack is cool, but for the most part Link is doing very basic samey attacks. It'd be cool if he could learn some new moves, even different moves for different weapons. Maybe things that cost more durability but give better damage output, or offer an extra effect like piercing armor. Maybe there could be an attack that even if it misses will destroy your weapon, but if it hits it deals big damage. The focus on wearing different clothing will most likely change the way enemies approach hurting you as well. So in a similar vein, I think it'd be cool if clothes gave you new mobility options, or even downgrades. Maybe equipment that allows you to survive in cold places will make it so that you can't run as fast, or light clothes that allow you to survive in hotter places will make you take more damage. But hopefully there's something that's a bit more interesting than pants that make it so you can dodge better. Since this game has a big focus on combat, even including stealth mechanics, I think it's safe to say that the fighting in this game will be more involved than ever before. The stamina bar is back. It was awful in Skyward Sword, nobody liked it. It recharges a lot faster, but man, Link can barely sprint for a second before he completely depletes it. It's been confirmed that there are temporary and permanent ways to boost Link's stamina, but that means the game might not be as open as it's claiming. Link's climbing is tied to his stamina, so there will invariably be places that Link can't reach without high enough stamina. Either that or stamina upgrades will be more or less worthless. Since Link's inventory is now relegated to temporary items that can break, all of Link's true items are tied to his Sheikah tablet. Because of their weird Techno Magic powers, they're pretty cool. Well, bombs and slightly differently shaped bombs aren't that exciting, but the new stasis and magnetism powers look pretty good. They're more general use powers that give a lot of freedom, and that combined with the fact that puzzles will have multiple solutions has me feeling that puzzles might be a bit less tight than in previous games, but that's not the point. These powers, along with more than likely some new ones in the final game, are perfect for open world game design. The appeal of an open world game is making your own fun, so broad powers like this are perfect for that. Being able to lift things can obviously be used in a lot of different ways, but the stasis ability, which builds up force on an object after being repeatedly hit before flying off, immediately got me excited about what you could do with that. For example, with a bunch of exploding crates and a bunch of hammer attacks. This is the kind of stuff that open world games thrive on. Abilities that inspire you to play. There's barely any music. In theory it's to create atmosphere, but I just find that boring. This is Zelda. Half the games are about music, and almost all of them have at least one playable instrument. I want iconic music to accompany me and really sell me on this big world of adventure. The weird ambient noises are almost distracting, and I already hate the battle theme just by watching streams. It's not like open world games aren't allowed to have music anyways. Xenoblade Chronicles has an amazing soundtrack. In fact, that was a big part of what sold me on that game. There's an argument to be made that hearing the same music over and over will get repetitive. But if repetition is such a big concern, here's my solution. Dynamic music. Have one long piece, or maybe a couple different pieces, play throughout the world, and then tie each individual segment of that song to your surroundings. The more trees that are around you, the louder the tree portion gets. Near a river, the river part plays. Have the music slowly fade to nothing as you climb higher on a mountain. Make the whole thing sound more heroic when you're riding on a horse. Bonus points, it could transition into completely new songs as you approach key areas. For example, get deep enough in the forest and you hear the Lost Woods theme play. Climb a fiery mountain and Death Mountain plays. I mean, all I really wanted was for Time of Falling Rain, the Maiden's Seal to play when it rained. But it looks like the music isn't going to be much of a thing. The music in the trailer was beautiful though. It's weird. People are always talking about how this game will have no story, or that the story won't be important, or it'll be simple like the first Zelda, or something like that. But so far, I'd say it's really not. I mean, just look at Link. This is the first time in any Zelda game where Link himself has been significant. Not significant in the sense that he saves the world, but an important plot point in his own right. Link has always been a very minimal character. I'd hesitate to even call him a character. He's meant to be a link to the player after all. He's always had humble beginnings. His family was kept vague or minimal, with the notable exception of Wind Waker, and there's never really been a plot point about Link himself, until now. Link's origins are a complete mystery. Him being in a place called the Chamber of Resurrection puts him at the opposite end of the spectrum compared to his humble predecessors. He's not a farmer, he's not an elf baby, he's not a sleepy student, he's something, and we just don't know what that is. But that's just Link. I've seen a lot of people getting mad that people are trying to fit this game into the Zelda timeline, but this game practically begs for it. It gives you explicit time frames, item descriptions seem to offer small hints, but there's more than that. The Koroks from Wind Waker have returned. People say Nintendo doesn't care and just put them in for no reason, but I don't buy it. The Koroks were used in Wind Waker, and then never again, not even in its sequels. Skyward Sword could have used the Koroks in its forest area, but instead we have new creatures, the Kikwis, who almost seem like predecessors to the Koroks. But you'd think that a Wind Waker creature firmly plants this in the Wind Waker timeline, right? But wait, there's more. The HD port of Twilight Princess has carvings of the Rito, another Wind Waker species, even though Twilight Princess is in a different timeline. People have also noticed that the Temple of Time in this game looks just like the one from Ocarina of Time, and there are also ruins containing statues from Skyloft from Skyward Sword. But then beyond that, there's what appears to be an airship in the distance, something no other Zelda game has even hinted at. So what I'm getting at is, we barely know anything about this game, but there's so much going on already. Why is the Master Sword ruined? What's with all this technology? What's the deal with the Calamity Ganon? How did he get such a cool name? It may not have a lot of characters or cutscenes, but I don't think I've ever been so intrigued by a Zelda game. This is without a doubt my biggest worry. Let's talk about open world games in general for a second, specifically about content dilution. At the core of an open world game, at least in the current market, is the size of the world. It's what sells the game in most cases. They offer bigger, more freely explorable spaces than most games. With that comes content dilution. Basically, if something smaller and more tightly packed does something, the open world variant will have to split it into smaller pieces, diluting it, and thus making it less valuable. This isn't a condemnation of open worlds, or Breath of the Wild. It's something every open world game needs to do. If they don't, the massive worlds they build will feel barren and empty. But there's only so much content you can make in a game, so it's a necessary sacrifice. What separates the good games from the bad is how well they mask this dilution. Assassin's Creed makes for an easy example since there's so many games. The early games, because of the technology at the time, have smaller maps. They have specific missions that dot the area. As technology and technique grew, the worlds grew with them. The missions changed. The two most recent games show how much execution matters as the world gets bigger. Assassin's Creed Unity has a massive world filled with plenty of missions, collectibles, and random events. But there's too many, it's overwhelming. And because there's so many things to do, the rewards are generally awful. Next year, Assassin's Creed Syndicate brought down the scope. There were less missions, but the quality was much higher in general. A lot of missions in Unity would involve running from one place to another with nothing happening. Syndicate instead focused on making getting from place to place a bit more involved. There were chariots, an enemy gang, and you had a grappling hook to get around quickly. Even then, Syndicate still dilutes its content. The missions it offers fill up a gauge that will gradually give you more rewards. Rather than have these rewards mark the end of a significant mission, they're now the end result of multiple missions. As I said, this is a problem that all open world games have, and it's just a matter of selling it well. Breath of the Wild hasn't sold me on it. The method chosen to give the player a constant need for rewards on the big map is to make most things not permanent. Items break, you have limited inventory. That means finding something might not be an upgrade, but simply maintaining your status quo as your weapons degrade. And hunting for a constant supply of consumable items just plain isn't satisfying. What triggered this worry was a quote from Nintendo's livestream, where one of the presenters said there was something to find everywhere, but the things he cited finding were apples and acorns. The problem I think with Breath of the Wild is that a lot of this stuff sounds great in concept, but it easily becomes obnoxious the moment you think about playing the game. Foraging in the wild sounds great, until you have to backtrack 40 minutes because you cleared out the area and you have no way to replace your broken weapons. And the problem you'll always run into in any open world game is that moment when you just want to get to the other end of the map, and there's no good way to get there besides running in a straight line for 20 minutes. The moment the game stops engaging you, the illusion starts to break down, and you become more aware of the game you're playing. And in an open world game, that can be its downfall, because you'll inevitably feel the grind. But there's another side to all that. This Zelda doesn't care about you, in a good way. You're simply turned loose into the world, and if you bite off more than you can chew, that's that, you're punished for it. There's nothing that looks like it'll hold your hand like any recent Zelda has, besides the mysterious guide telling you where your next story section is. As such, finding stuff is meaningful. I'm a bit worried about what you'll find because again, apples and acorns don't sound like very exciting rewards, but in a way, that doesn't matter. I'd actually respect Nintendo a lot if they didn't release a guide for this game, or at least didn't at first, and forced players to set out on their own instead. It'd be interesting to see a game in this day and age where new things can be discovered months, maybe even years after release, even if it's just a few acorns. So those are my biggest hopes and concerns for Breath of the Wild. What are yours? What do you think of this radical new direction for Zelda? And before you say it's not a new direction and this is just going back to its roots, come on guys. It's a similar core idea, but this plays nothing like Zelda 1. Feel free to leave a comment war about the Zelda timeline that lasts for 100 years below. You can follow me on Twitter at HatTalkTalk, but fair warning, I'm a lot more negative about Breath of the Wild there. And hey, if you like this video, check out I've Never Played A Link to the Past by Rasputin. It really helps them out. And with all that said, see you next time.